Everything you're going to see in this presentation explores this question. How portrait photography, driven by an innate sense of mystery and a relentless need to believe in something transcendental, enables images dwelling in an optical space beyond the secular representation of reality. Well, my thesis is that contemporary portrait photography retains a mystical potency neither to reveal a truth, nor to answer a question, not to support a belief, but in Jung's words, to cultivate thoughts that can never be proved. Willem Flusser explains in his Towards a Philosophy of Photography that since the dawn of humanity, images has been used as maps of meaning to navigate the liminal space between magical consciousness and material reality. It is thought by the anthropologists and archaeologists that our ancestors in the Paleolithic used images, psychedelics, music, and dance to transcend their limited cognitive perception and expand their consciousness. With the advent of photography in the 19th century, consciousness was technologically expanded, and the mystical function of images was replaced by the more pragmatic one. Images, instead of serving as negotiators between realities, they became concrete representations of a deterministic world. Walter Benjamin introduced in 1934 the term optical unconscious to describe the world that cameras suddenly had revealed, a previously unseen dimension of reality that remained invisible because it was too small, too big, too fast, too slow, or too dispersed to be perceived by the naked eye. The power of manifesting the invisible that photography brought with it was used by many photographers in the 19th century to catch a glimpse of the supernatural, especially of the transcendental essence of the human being, the soul. Despite the fake nature of spirit photography, many people embrace it as a reinforcement for their belief systems, threatened by the relentless cultural secularization. This radical secularization has been supported by technology and science. Both have made possible over the years the demystification of archaic belief systems, replacing divine wisdom by technological knowledge. Nevertheless, Eric Davis claims in his book Technosis that despite the abandonment of religion and spirituality in the West, technology is scattering Westerners with supernatural realities displayed on video games, films, and TV series, with many other products, channels, and platforms. What was the spirit photography of the 19th century has become the spirit entertainment of the 21st century. The same relentless cultural desire to believe in something beyond material existence make many artists to look inwards nowadays. Some artists are purely driven by the sense of the transcendental to expand knowledge into the domain of the unknown. But the ways into the unknown are most of the times inscrutable, and symbols and archetypes must be used to guide the way. Carl Gustav Jung studied thoroughly the cognitive significance of art and created a taxonomy of symbols and archetypes that led to the deepest levels of the human psyche. His biggest contribution was the concept of the shadow, an unconscious part of the psyche that keeps in the dark the true impulses of the self. Me, as an artist dedicated to portrait photography, my main goal is to manifest the soul of the sitter, an evasive soul that lurks in the depths behind flesh and bone. The intention of my practice has always been to access the ulterior layers of the self to reveal the true essence of the world I look at. But the true spirit of things rarely shows up in photographs. It is usually hidden where the light cannot reach, and only symbolic representations can be created to invoke its presence. As I said before, there are many ways to go to the unknown places where the soul dwells, and looking back to my practice, I realized that I have followed in an intuitively way the same paths that other artists in a similar quest have followed before. To initiate my journey towards the unknown, to find the essence of the self, I looked at the work of Bill Henson, Taryn Simon, and Vivienne Sassen. They all three work with an archetypal shadow as an almost esoteric entity able to connect worlds. Artists such as Bill Armstrong and Bill Jacobson make their subjects to wander in psychical dimensions made of pure darkness. In their photographic works, subjects are transformed into lost souls emerging from the depths in an attempt to make contact with the world of the living. Armstrong and Jacobson made me realize that instead of pushing my subjects into the unknown, I should bring forth whatever that is submerged in the psychical depth of the people I photograph. The image I used in the interim show was the representation of a divine spirit falling into the unknown. The idea was to display the image alongside an audio piece to create an environment similar to a sacred place, something like a chapel, where images, light, and sound are harmonized to create a spiritual experience. But the image I used was moving away from its observers. I felt the image was rushing to retreat from reality rather than manifesting itself to engage with its viewers. I came back to work and I went to my favorite sacred place, my studio. The way my new work has been produced in my studio is as important as the resulting images. For every session, I ask every sitter to wear something blue as a symbol of the spiritual and eternal, and I instructed them to be in my studio at a time close to the sunset, to allow the light to become dimmer and dimmer during the session until it would be totally dark outside. I started every session by taking 3 Polaroid portraits of my guests. The Polaroids, unlike conventional digital film photography, cannot be manipulated. They speak the truth. Baudrillard referred to Polaroid photography as an ecstatic membrane that has come away from the real object. The time between every take could be up to 10 minutes to make the sitter remain in a meditative state with her or his eyes closed, facing the spotlight, immersed in introspection until the photo was taken. In this new body of work that I have produced, I have pushed visuality to the limits of abstraction, and as if using a magic spell, I have reinstated the aura that Walter Benjamin claimed the work of art have lost at the hands of mechanical reproduction. After all, I wanted to portray the soul of the sitter, and I also wanted to reinfuse a magical energy into contemporary photography that I think is missing. Portraiture is my field, and there are aspects of identity beyond ethnicity, gender, sex, race, and social status that I'm interested in as a portrait photographer. In my practice, the notion of identity is extended beyond the personal to encompass wider aspects of human life, such as the soul, the psyche, and the transpersonal nature of human beings. According to Jung, there is a transpersonal identity deep down beyond the superficial ego. As Jung described it, at the deepest levels of the psyche, every notion of the individual self dissipates. Any individual feature blurs. All that remains is luminous energy. The visual dissolution of superficial identity is attained technically in my practice by placing the sitter under a color spotlight and then defocusing the face to remove any physical identity feature. As the last step, a composite is created by digitally overlaying different frames from the portrait photography session to represent a visual emanation of the inner self made of pure energy. The sonic dimension of the piece presented in the interim show has been translated into visual form as color radiation. The new body of work is much more consistent and interesting because it's numinous aesthetics. The way light has been treated in these portraits create an interesting connection between photography and spirituality. The idea for the final exhibition is to present 5 to 9 portraits mounted in A0 backlit frames to be displayed in a very low light environment. The exhibition space will be dark and self-contained, entirely isolated from external noise. The name of the series, Luminous Numinous, gives to the portraits an esoteric character, and it sounds as a magical spell used to open a door between worlds, through which the mystical entities manifests in the material world of the viewer. Thank you very much.